Professor Yoko Hayami. It's an honor to have you all today with us. Today's event is not just about marking the end of an era, but also about celebrating the incredible contribution that Professor Hayami has made to cultural anthropology, especially who works around current community in Thailand and Myanmar, and also extensive research on other topics as well, such as gender, family, religions, and aging and care. We extend a heartfelt thanks to Professor Hayami for her dedication and leadership over the years in academia as a professor, prominent researcher, and a director of the Centers for Southeast Asian Studies at Kyoto University. So let's take this opportunity to reflect on her achievements and legacy she left behind. And we have an engaging program today, including the special talk from Professor Suvichai Matgam, the director of the Center for Peace and Conflict Study atฬาลงกรณ University, and also the introduction to Professor Hayami and her works by Associate Professor Pachiwan Wodang, the Department of Sociology and Anthropology at Tsinghua University. And thank you all for joining us today. Let's begin this seminar with the opening statement from our Dean, Associate Professor Tepin Pachanurakha.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this very special seminar. Japanese anthropologists in Korean communities. This seminar commemorates the remarkable career and retirement of an esteemed scholar, mentor, and our best friend, Professor Yoko Hayami. For many of us, Professor Hayami has been a guiding light in the field of anthropology and cultural studies. Her dedication to her research, her resilience, and her courage has left an indelible mark on our academic community. Today, we not only honor her numerous contributions, but also reflect on the profound impact she has had on our. Professor Hayami's journey has been one of relentless pursuit of knowledge, characterized by her groundbreaking research in ethnic and gender study and also aging and care. Her insightful exploration of cultural practice and her commitment to bringing the voice of marginalized communities to the forefront. Her work has transcended borders, enriching our understanding of the world in ways that and transformative. Throughout her illustrious career, Professor Hayami has been a source of inspiration for countless students and scholars. Her mentorship has nurtured the talents and ambitions of young researchers, empowering them to pursue their own path with the same passion and integrity that she has exemplified. Her legacy is not just in her public work and academic achievement, due to Professor Hayami's enduring influence, it is a day to celebrate not only her professional accomplishment, but also the warmth, generosity, and kindness that she has brought to us. Finally, I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to our distinguished speaker, Professor Suvichai Matgam, Associate Professor Dr. Pachiwan Wodang, and Assistant Professor ดวงใจ Law Kanawani, and all participants here and all the organizers for making this seminar a reality. So thank you very much.
Without further ado, please allow me to welcome our esteemed guest speaker, Professor Surishay Matgam, the Director of the Center for Peace and Conflict Studies at La Long Grn University. He will be giving a special talk titled Thailand and Japan from Cash-up Development to Sharing and Caring. Please welcome.
Good morning, Professor Hayami, Professor Hirsch, and especially the Dean, and Pipin, and Konsiwan, and all the speakers. I'm very honored to be a starter, but I would like to be a bit informal in my presentation, although the topic may look a little serious. The reason why I put this as a topic is also a part of my life. How I came to engage with Japan and how we in Thailand, through certain experiences, have still feel Japan as a place to interact and to learn, and we have a lot of entanglements. Not only one-to-one, but a lot of relationships that are worth to reflect upon on this occasion. Ajahn Hayami has been a very special person, so this is a small tribute to of appreciation to her. Yeah. What I have in mind to share with you is in the developments of countries in Asia of our generation and before our generation. I think what struck many people, including thinkers in Thailand around this few hundred years, was related to how Japan became a power in the world and how the speed of modernization became a force of global importance. I could mention, I don't have to mention several, but there are people who in the Thai modernization history who would cite how they saw the way Japan rose into power. Some people are much attracted by how Japan won the Russo-Japanese War in 1905. So now, with that background, you see, my personal experience is that 70s was a part when I finished my high school, my university, and the place where we would go to study under the condition, under certain atmosphere in Thailand. May I mention at that time, Chulalongkorn University was presided over by Field Marshal Praphat Tarusathian as the director, as as the president of Chulalongkorn. So the generation was not very free in some sense. But many people, including myself, thought maybe I would like to study abroad, and I was among a few who decided to go to Japan at that time. So I will not go into the detail of this, but the 2 points of this outline reflect on how Japan have been impacted and how lessons of learning of development experience through Japan became a part of my personal experience in starting some graduate programs, including the International Development Studies at Chulalongkorn University, which now became a graduate for Masters and PhD International Program. But with Ajahn Hayami, I became more frequently associated under a program called Asian Public Intellectuals Fellowship, API. So that was for about 15 years. You could see from the topic that I have given to you, the idea of a country catching up the other more advancing country was a strong thinking in global modernization history as well as development studies. But my personal experience in the 70s in Japan made me feel that that should not be the case. Looking at one another as countries competing on the canvas of development is one way. That is called catch-up developmentalism, as I propose. But in Japan, I learned through several engagement with the local communities, including my visit to many polluted areas of Japan at that time, including Minamata and Fuji, the mountain of Fuji, many villages near the sea. Made me and my generation who were educated there in Japan at that time, thinking that there should be a different way of looking at development, not only stage by stage like that, but to see how human experiences could be more valuable beyond the usual competing steps of development. Okay, so just to show you some human faces which are familiar in my own experience, but for Thailand as well. For us in this room, may I mention a few names in this? Some of you, I think you are familiar. The first person is one of the most important intellectual in the post-war education and also economic development. He is also a friend of a few others at a very political economic group in the United States. But for Japan, he proposed the thinking of Japan after losing the war, as we have to find how to make the defeat a creative space for Japan. So the strategy he proposed was the creative defeat. Certainly everyone knows that was after the atomic bomb and how to, yeah. But I just mentioned this name because he has been very important also after pollution period that affected Japan. He became also very important figure in intellectual, I'm sure you know. But for me, Ajahn Ishii was also so important that the way he speaks Thai language, the way he discuss about กฎหมายตราสามดวง was so shocked. Yeah, and this is how very educated, a very important figure in Japanese research circles and intellectual circles by this figure, Ajahn Ishii, who was a monk at Wat Bawar Niwe for a while. At least I want to mention him because he never propagated anything that please learn from Japan. He never said a word about it. But he emphasized on how to deepen our understanding. And I remember this very frequent discussion with him. The other is another professor at the Center for Southeast Asian Studies as well. Ajahn Hayami became a director later. Ajahn Yano was a very important figure in terms of political studies of Southeast Asia and specifically Thailand. I mentioned him later. He's now passed away, but I will mention his name a little later. But the other two names, which I think was so important in my direct engagement in the Kansai circles, Ajahn Umesao Tadao, who proposed a ecological critique of human civilizations, which I think are worthwhile to be visited beyond the usual developmentalism of the kind that we have been familiar. He was the one who was so important in the sense that after exhibition, Expo event was very important for Japan during the 60s. And Osaka was the site. And he proposed that after Expo, how to use the space. And the space became National Museum of Ethnography. How to make Japan learn more about other cultures and ethnic groups. And there I met many people, including Ajahn Wanchiwan and the hero who kindly sit over there. Yes. Yes. Certainly Ajahn was very important for me to engage. But my point here, just to highlight why developmentalism is so much a case. My personal experience is in the year 1985 New Year program. NHK usually have a New Year program on television, televised. And January 1st evening, it will be televised. And that program, I just want to mention, because that year, 1985, I happened to be invited to be in the panelist with Ajahn Yano. And there were 4 people, a professor from Korea, a professor from Singapore, a professor from Indonesia, and myself. At that time, what I want to mention here was that there was a question that is still lingering in my mind now, but it did not appear when we were preparing about the panel. The question was, to say in Japanese, the question was, third panel, in the panel, the question was pronounced by Mr. Isomura Hisanori, very well-known NHK person, together with Ajahn Yano, which made me feel that it's worthwhile to revisit this issue of this kind. When will your country when do you think your country can catch up with Japan? That was the question. When do you think your country will catch up with Japan? How many years? So the first one, go to Korea, and then go to Singapore. I was the last, so I was quite happy because I was surprised with this question. Anyway, I don't want to mention my answer, but the question here just relates to the phenomenon called Minamata, which now became a UN Convention on Minamata, Convention on Mercury. I will not go into detail, but it highlights the issue of pollution, industrial pollution that create health impacts to the sea, to the fish, to the human health, and this became so important in the history of development in Japan and in the world, recognized through this convention. Ajahn Harada is someone who visited Thailand for his caring for the pollution in the local area at Ron Pibun, Nakhon Si Thammarat, where the arsenic pollution hurt many villages, but the government do not want to declare because it will impact on the fruits, on the products from the province that which are sold outside. Shinobu Sakamoto, she is a very important figure because she herself impacted by pollution, Minamata. She's born like this, but this photo taken when she came to Chula a few years ago, and the word she said was repeatedly said, "Please do not repeat our mistakes. Please do not repeat Minamata." Because once the human physics and the health system, the neuro system are destroyed, it could not be cured at all. So with this encounter with this man who was Palat Kasung Sapyakon, Vichan Simachaya, the invitation for Thailand to engage with was successful. So with this kind of concern, I increasingly thought the common issues between Thailand and Japan should be more important than just developmentalist thinking. So in light of our tribute to Ajahn Hayami, her simplicity but very dedicated work, how to engage with the reality of the marginal communities, is also exemplifying our work. So in a way, the sense of human security, the sense of common human security that we should share more together became a part of how I think certain people in Japan also were concerned with how our common human security beyond the usual economic security or economic competition should dominate. So along that line, I just would like to highlight this, and it was again reflected in one international conference that we organized in 1997 at Chula with the Japanese Studies Network at that time. The topic was globalism, developmentalism, and Japanese studies. The idea certainly was going beyond developmentalism into a more how we can engage in more collaborative learning in the world of human and also in environmental challenges. Thailand also, I should also like to mention a bit quickly that we learned tsunami only through our direct experience in 2004. I mentioned this in the light of this year is 20th year. 2 decades of our tsunami experiences. And in that experiences, it was fortunate that I was able to engage in a direct research in the field, and which were putting together in this book form, how we could learn. And at that time, we were able to engage with the experiences of how to cope with disaster in the Kobe experience as well across. One key lesson I learned through this is, which can link with Ajahn Hayami in some way, if humbly I can mention. We discover the others in Thailand that we are not familiar. Thai people, Thai society are not familiar with many ethnic groups in Thailand only until tsunami. Among them, Chao Le. And some people would call them Thai Mai, which how the name is given is also a little problematic. But my point here, I am not going to go into this, but just today we are together here to pray tribute to the work, and we do hope to have more learning from with and from Ajahn Hayami. But in the light of the global climate disasters and the biodiversity collapse, I think we need really to have the knowledge about the other way of knowing the earth, other ways of knowing planet, knowing the climate, knowing our environment should be more highlighted in how we deal with our own problems together. And with this, I think I just would like to highlight that most social sciences are familiar with anthroposphere, but we are not so much linked to the other sphere. And most knowledge in the university systems are of silo type, which are not allowed to be integrated to a more systematic approach to the question of dealing with our crisis. Because of climate and extreme events from the climate demand more engagement. SDG would not help us by its own design. It can help us only as a part of a discussion, which are not in time at all for what we are facing, the collapse. So with this, I just would like to highlight the last week, 2 weeks ago, I was with Ajahn Hayami. She is the present, I think, president of Thai Studies Association of Japan. And this Nittai Kakkai organized big annual conference, and at that conference I was able to be a part of visiting the event, and I was honored to listen to the closing remarks of the Nayok Samakom Japan, the Thai ศึกษาแห่งญี่ปุ่น. It was organized at Osaka University, which are now the Osaka Prefectural University amalgamated with Osaka City University. Okay. The closing remarks after a 2 days conference, and I thought about nearly 40 papers, from all over Japan, all over regions, universities and research, including even consultant companies which have been important in Thai-Japan connection. This I just would like to highlight. Someone may know the man in the middle, Ajahn Akangi, who is a key person for Thai-Japan connection, including bringing the princess Thai side and Japanese side together. Ajahn Akangi also put together, edited ประธานุกรมภาษาประธานุกรมไทยศึกษา upon nearly 1,000 pages. And the man on the right is Suihiro Akira, my contemporary. Okay, who Suihiro wrote this book การพัฒนาอุตสาหกรรมแบบไร่กวด catch up industrialization, which also make our understanding about Southeast Asia and Asian development in the global context of political economy become more highlighted or understood. And the left hand is the dictionary ประธานุกรมไทยศึกษา by อาจารย์กากดี. One word that by talking to you now and highlighting the moments together here, I think how we value development have become a real challenge in our academic and research, including our policy design today. And I think Ajahn Puttathar would say Sunyatta. Some people, some of our would call it the emptiness of development, because the meaning of development without human life, without human relationships to other beings, with the environment, should be questioned. So along that line, the concern for speed and the concern for this need really to be reflected upon. So with today, with Ajahn Hayami visit to Chiang Mai University, I would like to bring the sense of solidarity with her work, some way that we can learn more together into the future, how we can work and engage in a more open-ended learning for our common future together under very serious challenges of biodiversity collapse, and also under the challenges of very powerful geopolitics, which are very much uncaring for human responsibility to one another and human responsibility to the earth. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ajahn Suvichai, for a remarkable opening session in this session, especially like the portray of the cordial relationship between Thai and Japanese academics who work together on development. We also have a bit of 5 minutes before break, so anyone in the room have any reflects on the talk that Ajahn Suvichai gave, please have this time. Anyone have any remark or like reflections? Ajahn Philip.
Thank you very much, Ajahn, for that wonderful reflection, both an appreciation for the relation, also to reflect on this idea of following in Japan's footsteps when I studied development earlier on, I guess we talked about this as the flying geese model, right? And I wonder whether you or perhaps Ajahn Hayami might reflect on whether this is still the model, or whether you think things have fundamentally changed, not only in development studies, but in the mainstream discourse about development.
Thank you, Ajahn Phil. When we, Ajahn Phil mentioned one word, flying geese model. If you can check, people like Ajahn Pasu, also refer to this line of thinking. The question that you asked is broadening not only country economy, national economies as competing units alone, but the flying geese model became a large canvas. The mode of competing among national economies in the whole global economic system, the whole international economy, which everyone knows that WTO, IMF, ADB, etc. And even China has to start a new one, like AI. So along that line, I think the question is very relevant in the sense that, for me, I just shortly I can answer that it's helpful to think in terms of metaphor. Metaphor like the flying geese pattern makes Asia network of, if you use the word of today, supply chain network in Asia. Imagine some people in Thailand are so proud that Thailand was not this, the tribe of Asia. Imagining Thailand in that. So the connection of competing economies, but in the network of production chain, in the network of consumption chain, the network of more complexity supply chains of today. So I think in some way it makes sense, but I think everything of this metaphor do not really have a sense of biodiversity collapse. And I think this is very dangerous. Frankly, I think we are very much, we have to challenge all economic models that are not inclusive of the care for our biodiversity and our cultural diversity that we have to learn from. And with that, I think we can discuss a little more, I hope.
Thank you, Ajahn Suchai. So, as for now, it's about time for a break. So, for those who haven't had breakfast yet, so we have a breakaway for you at the register spot, and we will have 10 minutes breaks. Toilets is on the right wing here, and the snack is on the left wing over there. So we have a 10 minutes break from now. I will see everyone back here in around 10:20.
Can we have another group here?
อาจารย์แจงเชิญ Very important case. Never been for long. เอาไว้แบบการต่อไป
อาจารย์ไทยนี่อาจารย์คนอาจารย์หลักอยู่แต่เราก็อยู่ในตัวนั้นฟิวอยู่การคุยลาการคุยลาอาจารย์ไทยนี่
introduce Professor Yoko Hayami and her words, please.
Good morning, everybody. I'm honored to introduce Professor Yoko Hayami before she will speak about her work on ethnicity, gender, and aging. Professor Hayami obtained her PhD degree in anthropology from Brown University in the United States and has worked at the Center for Southeast Asia Studies, Kyoto University since 1996. She has conducted research in the Korean communities both in Thailand and Burma and has published well-known books and articles such as Between Hills and Plains, Power and Practice in Socio-Religious Dynamics Among the Korean. And another example, the book entitled Ethnography of Difference and Connection, Ethnicity and Gender in Korean Society in Northern Thailand. She was the director of the Center for Southeast Asia Studies from 2018 to 2022 and has just retired from the center in March this year. On the occasion of Professor Hayami's retirement, I would like to celebrate her achievement in the last 4 decades. My further talk will be about what I have learned from her works as we have met and worked together in a few projects. Talking about the past seems to be the habit of the elder. But that kind of talking will make the present meaningful, as I believe. I have studied the Korean people in the north and west of Thailand since 1980s, but I have personally met Professor Hayami later. First at the International Thai Studies Conference, which was organized in Chiang Mai, Thailand in 1996. It was later at the International Thai Studies Conference in Amsterdam, Netherlands in 1999 that I was very impressed with Professor Hayami's Karen language ability. I remember very well that on one plenary session in that Thai Studies Conference in Netherlands, Patik Johnny, a well-known Korean leader, was invited to speak on the stage with other ethnic leaders. Professor Hayami was requested to help promptly interpret from Korean to English and Thai to English for other ethnic leaders who spoke in Thai. To be able to use the language of people whom we study is the conventional requirement of anthropologists as we immerse ourselves in the study communities to deeply understand their culture. This may be changed as anthropologists are now studying the same people in their own society. I'm from Chiang Mai. When I choose to study the Korean, I should also learn how to speak Korean, but I did not make a greater effort to learn as the Korean in Thailand now speak more Thai. So I find it convenient to speak Thai. However, I have also observed that speaking only Thai created a gap between me and the Korean, especially the Korean women who don't feel comfortable to speak Thai. With Professor Hayami's ability to master the Korean language, I'm sure that the Korean people, especially women, will feel close to her and take her as their relatives. This is also because she has also continuously contacted, visited, and supported her study communities. I also see that Professor Hayami's graduate students who came to study the Korean in Thailand also follow suit. They all managed very well to be able to speak, read, and write both the Korean and Thai language. It just happened that I share many interests in the study topics as Professor Hayami's. The issue on religious conversion and religious movements in relation to the changing context is our shared topics. I started to review Professor Hayami's work for my dissertation, but only when I graduated in 2001, I became in closer contact with her. I was invited to attend a workshop in Laos under the project entitled Making Regions Proto-Areas Transformation, which was managed by Professor Hayami and her team from the Center of Southeast Asia Studies, Kyoto University, who organized that workshop in Laos. That is the first time that I met and worked with Ajahn Hayami. In that conference, I have presented my paper on Kuba movements and the current in northern Thailand, negotiating sacred space and identity, which was later published in 2002 in a book edited by Ajahn Hayashi and Ajahn Thong Sa in Laos. After that event, it seems that our paths frequently crossed when she organized a panel in the 2002 International Thai Studies Conference in Illinois, United States. As a result from that panel, my paper entitled The Rise and Fall of the Tribal Research Institute, New Tribe Policy and Studies in Thailand was published in Donan Ajia Kengkil of Southeast Asia Studies in December 2006. I'm grateful to Professor Hayami for being an editor for the paper, which has been one of my papers most read by many scholars who are interested in the issue of new tribes in Thailand. So it has been more than 20 years since we meet. Look at the photos. We have to admit that we are growing older, but we have to admit also that we are still young at heart. From this top. I show the pictures, so it's disappear. What he said. So since 2006, I have joined Professor Hayami's project, which provided me opportunities to learn more about gender and family relations studies. This project has resulted in a book entitled The Family Influx in Southeast Asia, Institution, Ideology, Practice, edited by Yoko Hayami, Junko Koizumi, Chiridaporn Songsamphan, and Ratana Tosakun. My paper, Changing Family Relations and Practices of the Current People in Chiang Mai, Northern Thailand, is also included. So I recommend those who study about family relations and change. Maybe you already read this book. No? Yes, it comes. So this is what, just to show that some of the activities that I joined. So actually, the pictures are not related to the writing, no? So I may continue with my reading. เค So we look out the picture. Okay, it is also during 2006 and 2007 that I got a great opportunity to be a 6-month visiting scholar at the Center of Southeast Asia Studies of Kyoto University, hosted by Professor Hayami. This increased my knowledge on anthropological theories and methodology, which were applied by the Japanese and other international scholars. It has also expanded my network of scholars who share the same interests. I'm grateful to Professor Hayami for this opportunity and other academic activities which follow. One forgettable project that I joined is the series of workshops organized to discuss and critically comment James Scott's book, The Art of Not Being Governed. Apparently, the current villages which Professor Hayami and I chose to study for our PhD are both in Macham district of Chiang Mai. However, as Professor Hayami studied village situated at the watershed of Macham River, very far from the district office, it was later moved to be under the new Kalyan-Watana district. As we share the same interest in the current studies, especially on religions and religious movements, sometimes we have gone to the fields together in many places of northern Thailand, at Thailand-Burma borderland, and in the current state of Burma. Data collection in Burma can be difficult in the access to data sources, but I find that Professor Hayami has a high capacity to gather a lot of data to write a high-quality article, which are later published in well-known journals. I really like her seminal papers on the religious movements, such as the one entitled Pagodas and Prophets, Contesting Sacred Space and Power Among Buddhist Currents in Current State, published in Journal of Asian Studies in volume 17, number 4. Also, the paper Current Culture of Evangelism and Early Buddhist Mission in 19th Century Burma, which is published in Social Science and Missions. Her deep knowledge on anthropological theories, her good English writing skill, and her high capacity in field data collection contribute to the seminal papers, which are the sound basis for further research on the Korean religions. I also remember very well that 2 years ago in August 2022, Professor Hayami, a Japanese graduate student, my husband and I went to Meluk village, my study village, for my PhD. We stayed one night there. As usual in a Korean village, many people came to chat and drank local brew whiskey together in a Korean style. Usually everybody in a circle shared the same small cup. Whiskey would be filled in a cup, which is circulated to everybody to take a sip. It was a post-COVID-19 time when everybody was relaxed, did not wear masks or took any precaution. After return from the village, I got high fever and sore throat. Yes, we got infected with COVID-19. I phoned Professor Hayami and the student to check about her health, but it just happened that they had any problem, how strong they were. And I just read your biography and know that you are a member of a mountaineering club, so that's why I understand now. I also enjoyed the trip to Professor Hayami's study village just early this year. She joined the wedding ceremony of her sister's daughter. I learned a lot about the change in the village, especially that the bride and groom, both are the Korean from that village. Actually, the bride and groom were from neighboring villages, but they have known each other and developed their relationship via the internet now. Besides, I can see that Professor Hayami is much loved by her host family. She's regarded as their eldest daughter, so that their love and attachment with her would never drop down. So at the end of my talking, I would like to thank Professor Hayami for every opportunity she has given me to have more resources for conducting research, to learn more from participation in international forums, and to publish my works. I will not forget her support, generosity, and hospitality during the time I spent in Japan. So in the occasion of Professor Hayami's retirement, I hope she has more time and travel more often to Chiang Mai to continue the research and to visit Korean relatives and friends. I wish that Burma become more peaceful and that we can have a few visits there together again. So I'm now finishing my reflection of times I were with Professor Hayami. It is now Professor Hayami's turn to talk about her works under the topic of intersecting and connecting differences, studies on ethnicity, gender, and aging. So may I invite you, Professor Yoko Hayami, to give a special lecture. Please, Professor Hayami, now the floor is yours.
สวัสดีค่ะรู้สึกเป็นเกียรติอย่างสูงมากที่ได้โอกาสอย่างนี้ขอบคุณมากๆไม่สามารถ แสดงความขอบคุณยังมากพอ I'm actually quite overwhelmed. Thank you so much. Thank you to Social Science Department, Faculty of Social Science, and Ajahn Tae-ping. Thank you for thank you Ajahn Kwan Chi-wan and Ajahn Dwang Chai for preparing this occasion for me. And thank you Ajahn Sumichai for coming all the way again. After 2 weeks ago, he was in Osaka. We were there to celebrate his winning the national very medal. There are so many medals, but it's one of the high medals to commemorate and thank his involvement in the Thai-Japan relationship. So thank you for that, and we wanted to celebrate together at the Thai Suksa in Japan. Thank you for coming. And thank you everybody, Ajahn Ampon, Ajahn Philip, Ajahn Boise, everybody for coming today. And I'd like also to, in response to Ajahn Kwan Chi-wan's very also overwhelming introduction, I'd like to thank all of my Thai colleagues for all of the help and friendship that you have given me so that I the research that I have done over the almost 4 decades. And I have really a lot of respect for the scholarship of my Thai colleagues. And it's really an honor that I have been able to work together. So I think today I will actually the reason why I decided to talk about gender is partly because I think it's the least known or least the topic that I have least published in English about the Karen. And I actually am currently working on Chiang Mai area with Thongmuang, the lowland people on fair and aging. But since the title given me was Japanese anthropologist in Karen communities, I felt I should talk about the Karen. And so I look like a Karen also a little bit. And so I decided to choose this topic for today. First, let me talk a little bit about a Japanese anthropologist among Karen. There are many others. And my predecessor was Professor Iijima, who wrote a very fine monograph in Japanese in the 1970s. And okay, it's better. Okay. So Iijima Sensei was the first Japanese anthropologist among Karen people, and I was inspired by his work. And then there are students who followed, and I'm sure there are many, many more that I don't know about. So I'm not the only. And I'd like to talk a little bit about the Karen people's view of me as a Japanese in the village. Two stories. One is when I first entered the Karen village, the villagers, especially the older ones, came to me and asked, if we went to your country, will they catch us and eat us? I think this came from the war times because the Japanese soldiers really passed through the area where I worked, and they were very hungry, and so they exchanged their helmets or whatever they had with a head of cabbage or something to eat. And also there was a rumor that if women kept walking around in the forest or in the village at night, the Japanese soldier will come and catch me. So at night they would get together and sleep together to defend themselves. So with this memory, this is why they asked me. The second story is about Pipado, it's great-grandma, the great-grandma. She was from a neighboring village. One time I had come back to the village after a long absence, and usually my host father would welcome me and we'd sit down and have tea together or chat together. But this time he looked at me with some tension in his face and said, you should go to the next village because the grandma is on her deathbed and she wants to see you. And I was a bit surprised because I had only met her for maybe once or twice. But she was, I'll talk about this later, but she was one of the great matriarchs because for her ancestral ritual, there were 27 members who participated, which is the largest in the whole area. And so I went to interview her about this. So I had written about her and I felt responsible. So when he said, you should go and meet her, I ran to the next village. It's about 15 minutes walk. I went to see her. And she lives in a very small hut. And I went up the stairs. The current houses have steps. So I went up the steps. And she looked like, it was her last, like maybe an hour or so. And she looked like that, but she sat upright as her grandson was leaning against her to do the chair. And she sort of stretched her hand to me. So I shook hands with her, and she wouldn't let me go. So I started to sort of massage her arm, and the people surrounding her, her daughters, said, give her a tobacco from Japan, a cigarette from Japan. I had, in those days, don't frown on me, I used to distribute cigarettes from Japan to the people. And so they said, give her your cigarette. So I gave her a cigarette and someone lit it for her, and because she's always has a pipe in her mouth. So I gave her the cigarette and she had a smoke, and she looked at me and said, Glezi, which is long way. And I didn't know if she meant you came a long way from Japan or she meant I'm going a long way now. I wasn't clear, but she said that. And then one of her granddaughters or maybe a daughter said, thank you for coming. Now she can go to Japan in the next life. So it was like, to me, I would much prefer to be in a Korean village than in Japan in old age. But I think Japan was something that the villagers thought was a good place to be in the next life. So those are my two from the Korean side. And from my side, to be as a Japanese woman in a Korean village, I guess I'm always thinking about, at different stages of my life course, I was I was in the village, and I would think about how it would be if I were here, or how they would think about life in Japan. And so it's always a sort of a back and forth of perspectives in that sense. Now, today, since the seminar title includes Karen, I'll talk about Karen. And also, I published this book in Japanese in 2009. And I took too much time working on this book in Japanese that by the time it came out, all the material was outdated. So I couldn't publish anymore in English. So it never came out in English. So I feel like this is maybe an opportunity for me to talk about some of the things that I wrote in this book. And as Ajahn Kwanchiwan said, we are old-style anthropologists, and the material is also, I think you will recognize that it's quite outdated, and I will try to update where I can. But I feel that some of the ideas that I had in there are still worth talking about. So please bear with me. I will talk in this order. And I think perhaps because, I won't say because, I feel that my best ethnography was on the topic of gender. And when I said better part of my ethnographic work, what do I mean? I think ethnography should begin from the details and textures of people's lives, and good anthropological theory starts from right there. In the words, I found words from Veena Das that really expressed what I thought. Moving too rapidly from concrete human relationships or observations on the ground to higher level ideas, we lose the opportunity of knowing how events on the ground unfolded within particular lives. So this is my sense of ethnography. This is my first and main field site. My research over the past 4 decades or so took me to many locations in Thailand and Myanmar, but I come back to this village from time to time. It's in an area that is now Kalayan Watana, and the current call it Musiki, or the Mechen watershed area. And at the time of my early fieldwork, the district was almost entirely Karen, with some Lisu and Hmong villages. The closest Khon or northern Thai village was 40 kilometers north. I'll be talking about what I learned in the Karen village with focus on women's lives, mainly from the late 1990s to the 2000s, on 3 interrelated topics: motherhood, family, and how ethnic relationship and gender relationships mutually articulate and unfold together. So the first topic. For women in the village in the late 1980s to early 90s, the norm was to marry by age 20 at the latest. After marriage, the couple stays with the wife's parents, and they may eventually move out, but more often they would stay in the wife's village, depending on availability of land for cultivation. Inheritance was equal among children, although those who stayed in the village inherited land. Women, therefore, tended to live close to their own parents and sisters. Household chore was more on women than men, but men worked pretty hard in the fields and at home, especially during the wife's pregnancy. In some households, including mine, men, especially those who enjoyed drinking, tended to be very good cooks, and therefore were the main preparers of meals. In the life course of women, what conferred status of maturity in the village was primarily marriage and motherhood. Up until the 1990s, women, young and old, wore the Karen clothing in the village daily. In the Karen case, the difference of marital status was conspicuous because mugano, or the maidens, unmarried women, wore the white tunic, and the married women wore the red skirts. So you can imagine life was not easy for women who stayed unmarried, wearing the white tunic into old age, as well as women who were married but had no children. In most everyday matters, kin relationship is recognized bilaterally, meaning both the maternal and paternal line of kinsmen. They have equal weight in social and economic matters. However, the mother-daughter relationship was emphasized in the ancestral ritual where participants were traced through the mother-daughter line. Performance of this ritual demanded the practitioners to follow various regulations which permeated many aspects from living arrangements in the house, sharing of the hearth and food, and rearing livestock. The mother was the primary owner of the hearth and house, so that upon her death, the house had to be abandoned. A woman with many children, especially daughters, enjoyed dignified status as the matriarch of a large ritual group. All this means that as long as women stay within the village and follow through with such life course as mothers, they have a respected and relatively comfortable place in it. But the significance of having many children began to change in the late 1980s. Some women began to adopt family planning, mostly by injection or pills. Into the late 1990s, as the roads improved, women began to give birth in the neighboring district hospital, where they readily adopted tubal ligation after giving birth to a second child. As I was curious to know whether and how the decision was made, I conducted a survey of 42 reproductive careers of 42 women in the village, and how fertility and motherhood were undergoing change. The chart shows the gradual process of adopting contraception. In the 1980s, older women were critical of contraception. The ideal good life was still to have a large number of descendants to create a large network. But by the late 90s, the younger women who valued education for children gained a larger say. In the survey interviews, there seemed to be numerous cases of disagreement between husband and wife, and women were more eager in adopting family planning and contraception, and they were the primary decision makers in consultation with their husbands. In one unusual case, a man had a vasectomy performed without consulting his wife. The couple had 2 sons, but his wife was hoping to have a daughter, so she felt this was a terrible betrayal. Other village women were in complete sympathy with her, and they ostracized the husband for quite a while. Most women told me they waited to have at least 1 daughter. Women's life course changed drastically in adopting contraception readily. Indeed, the women were following state family planning policy for population control, but for their own felt reasons. Whereas previously women spent their entire reproductive years in childbirth, now the period of childbirth is limited to several years. The cohort of women born in the 70s and 80s were now able to involve in other activities, but primarily to pour more resources for their few children. Some going to school, kosono, and or seeking jobs to pay for children's education. What persists is the importance of motherhood, now with focus on fewer children. Now on family. I found it intriguing that even though every household seemed to constitute a nuclear or extended family, there was no single word for family in Karen. If asked what would correspond to, villagers came up with combined terms like Tokomo Popa, mother-child, father-child relationship, or Wadoduko, persons of the same stock. In outlook, the composition of each household is similar to what is prevalent in Japan, the modern nuclear family. But for Karen villagers, it didn't seem to constitute a closed group. Please take a look at this list by Japanese feminist sociologists Otsuya and Nishikawa. It's a list of features of the modern family in Japan. A clear separation of the woman's domestic domain and men's public domain, child-centeredness with emotionally focused with diminishing interest in socializing beyond the immediate nuclear family, and husbands in charge. The last item emphasizes that the modern family is the ultimate unit for state control. Very few of these apply to the current living unit, where membership fluctuates and strong ties continue to be maintained beyond it. In modern industrialized states, the modern family is indeed the minimal unit of governance, the unit where biopower can gain control of a closed, intimate domain. This is different in a setting where family is less a group unit, but a network, which might be able to diffuse the reaches of biopower. Back in the 1970s, my senior colleagues at the Center for Southeast Asian Studies, Professor and Subodhi, both Malay specialists, came up with the term family zone to depict this kind of network of familial relationships. They pointed out that even as the Malay family looks like a nuclear family, there's no bounded unit as in the modern family, but a network of relationships that go across residential units. My own findings among Karen were similar. Networks of relatedness were connected especially by women as mothers. This led me to start a project together with many colleagues of varied disciplines from Thailand, Japan, and other Southeast Asian countries on changing families in Southeast Asia, as Ajahn Kwanjiwan introduced. Whether and how families in Southeast Asia are different from the industrialized modern families, including post-war Japan, and whether with industrialization, families in Southeast Asia are approaching the modern family model or maintaining the network features. More recently, as I began research on aging and care, I found interesting changes in the living patterns in the village. As I mentioned above, for ritual reasons, only married daughters could live with parents. In my earlier fieldwork, there were only 4 cases where older persons lived by themselves, all of which were cases where they either had no children or they only had sons. All older persons who had daughters lived with them. In my survey from 2015, however, there were 9 cases of older persons living by themselves, and in 8 of these cases, they had married daughters living in the village, and yet they lived by themselves. Now, married daughters prefer to live under separate roofs. When I asked why they live separately, the inevitable answer from both sides was, that's easier. Lifestyle is different. Older persons prefer to live by the hearth. Younger members are noisy watching TV and prefer to use gas for cooking without the cumbersome hearth. Daughter or son might live close by and provide rice for the to cook by themselves, or they bring items of cooked meals for them. At night, they might send their children to sleep with the aging parents so they will not be sleeping alone. This means there's a flexible definition of membership in a household, or family. A living unit is not closed in terms of rice, food, or care, but are rather connected by these. What each living unit constitutes is less important than how care and assistance crosses and connects these units along relationships. So far, changes in the current family seem to be taking a very different turn from Japan. So the third topic. I mentioned that women were respected and lived comfortably if they stayed within the normative life course and within the village. But once they moved straight away from these, there could be ridicule or risk. In my early fieldwork, the risk of going beyond bounds was expressed as the danger of forests. I often tried to walk to the neighboring village through the forest, and inevitably someone would stop me and make sure I had someone else with me, even a child accompanying me. it was deemed dangerous for women to walk in the forest alone. I asked what the dangers was, what was dangerous about forests, and they would answer, evil spirits and Konmuang men. Women who walked freely outside the village were exposing themselves to the danger of attack by spirits and or Konmuang men. In the 1980s and 90s, relationships with Konmuang men was considered risky for Karen village women. This is due to differences in marriage and divorce practices and accompanying sexual norms. At the time, divorce was quite rare among the Karen villagers considered marriage among the Konmuang to be very unstable. This is why it was felt as a risk for Karen women to marry Konmuang men, while Karen men considered it easy to have relationships with Konmuang women. In the now classic volume on Karen ethnicity edited by Charles Claes, Kunstadter mentions how Karen parents hurried to get their daughters married before they were spoiled by Konmuang men, or Marlowe talks about how Karen men would have adventures with Konmuang women, but once they decide to really settle down, they come back to the Karen women. So there was a very blatant double standard. In S Village, I observed how women avoided being seen to be too eager to talk to Konmuang men, and their reputation was at risk if they wandered out of the village, especially into the city. And they would need to have an accountable way to stay in the city, such as to stay in the Karen dormitory or stay with older relatives. Also, if an unmarried couple had sexual relationship, they must perform a ritual of mending or cleansing, pouring sacrificial blood of the buffalo on the ground, after which they must be married. If, however, the transgressing man was a non-Karen man who doesn't share these customs, it might be difficult to perform this ritual and have the couple properly married subsequently. This places both the women as well as the village in jeopardy. For young unmarried women, moving around beyond the village was not an everyday matter and required some care and deliberation. So minority ethnic status is experienced differently by women from men. If we zoom out for a moment from the Karen village, we find objectifying and exploitative representations of women in the hills. In some of the earlier depictions of the hill population from the 1950s, like Bunchue Sisawat introduces Aka sexuality as being uninhibited and wild, emphasized in these drawings of the short skirts. This image of sexy Aka women stuck for a long time, while Karen, whose young maidens wore the white tunics, were represented as morally pure. Both are undoubtedly exoticized projections of illusion and desire by men from the dominant society. Such views of women in the hills was quite prevalent during my early fieldwork. One time, when I was riding the Rotoisan up into the Karen villages, as we passed in a Karen village, the driver pointed his finger and counted through the car window how many white tunics, i.e. unmarried women, in the village. The more impersonal the relationship, the more objectified the women become. And in the lowland power relationship, risks and stakes for women become higher. Older Karen women had no qualms about wearing the red Karen skirts in the city, but I remember whenever I went to the city with younger unmarried women, they would not wear the white dress. Other than in Christian churches, it was rare to see Karen young women in the city in white tunics. They say it is deathly embarrassing. My interpretation is that walking around in white tunics in the town would be exposing themselves to the fantasies and aspirations of lowland men. On occasion of various events managed by local administration or schools, Karen women are told to participate wearing ethnic costumes. During one school gymnastic event, the upper grade girls who were appointed as the flag bearers were told to wear the white tunics to lead the parade. One of them wore a market-bought jacket so that the white dress would not be conspicuous. This was the only way she could find to resist. Those in a vulnerable position are the most sensitive to the objectifying gaze targeting them. Hill Karen women are made visible objects of desire, and women had to negotiate their way between the moral codes of the hills, demands of lowland authorities, and the desiring eyes of lowland men. The point I want to make here is that in ethnicity or gender, power differential experienced by the weaker categories become reinforced and articulated at the intersection of gender and ethnicity. This is close to the feminist discussion on intersectionality. Intersectionality is a situation where various axes of discrimination, such as gender, sexuality, class, ethnicity, and race, combine and interact to create unique forms of oppression. This then seems to apply to the varied ways in which Karen or Hill women can be exploited socially and sexually. This is true in the structural understanding of the larger picture, which affects the experiences of minority women. The ethnographic quest is to see how people experience and evolve relationships at this intersection, which is what I hope to do. In discussing the intersection between ethnicity and gender, I want to introduce the story of No Ai. No Ai is one of the villagers. She is the daughter of a medicine man in S village, the second eldest of 7 siblings. At age 13, she suffered what sounds like polio and spent a year in Chiang Mai for medical treatment. She came home and one of her legs was disabled. She walks with some difficulty, and her younger sisters and subsequently her daughter help her around the house and the small shop she runs in the village. She's resourceful, knowledgeable, and worldly wise, and being about the same age, I often enjoyed listening to her as she talked to me openly about her experiences. In the late 1980s, she was the only young woman who had experienced the city. Please, when I talk about her story, which is in her own words, please note this list of current terms in the orange box. Quote, I went to Chiang Mai as a child, but by the time I came back, I was Muguno. Many Dzot men wanted me, followed me. I also enjoyed them, but I was too young. I liked them, wage, but I wasn't in love, or elosa, all these different terms to talk about men and women's relationships. Even after she returned to the village, she often had to go to the hospital in Chiang Mai. She met another man who followed her in the village. He followed me here, so we had to topga, get married. We had no choice. We had a full Karen wedding. I was 18 at the time. What she means here is, by having no choice, is that, as mentioned above, in Karen custom, if an unmarried couple travels around and spends a night under one roof, they must be married. Quote, but we weren't happy, she says. He was always irritated with me. At first he loved me, but he was soon fed up. So in effect, she was abandoned. As a woman in the hills with physical disability, she was doubly marginal and perhaps an easy target for Dzot men. Quote again, then I met another man who followed me from Chiang Mai and we got married. Then we parted. I kept repeating this, but then I had enough. A soldier, a factory owner, a health worker, many men, all so young. They follow me and then they leave me. Finally, I didn't want any more. If I got married again, I would part again. Dzot men are Dzot men. Since I was 14, all I wanted was to elosa. But elosa and part, I can't even remember their names. Then I finally decided, friend is good enough. It isn't appropriate for me to elosa. I no longer follow anyone. So perhaps after coming back to it, having relationships with Dzot men was a way to liberate herself and her very few choices. But because of that, she was also exploited by men, which she realized herself. Then she told me about how she came to marry her husband, Lung Pi, a man from Isan, more than 20 years older than herself. He had come to work in a pine oil factory in a nearby village. Finding her lively and uninhibited, he enjoyed her company and came to visit often. He himself was already married with children and grandchildren in Isan, but he proposed to marry No Ai. Quote, he wanted me, but I didn't like him, such an old man. My parents and sisters told me I should marry him. He's older and he's good. He can free you from all your worries. He gave my parents some money to prepare a wedding. I thought, oh, I must run away. So I told everyone I was going to the market in Pai and left the village. I thought I would go meet my former boyfriend in Pai and never return. On my way to Pai, I was having lunch in the noodle shop and Lung Pi himself came by coincidence. So we chatted. I told him I'm going to Pai market. Then he put some money in my bag. I didn't ask, but he just gave it. I left for Pai, but I kept thinking, would it be very sinful if I didn't return? I kept thinking, and without staying the night, I returned, and I got married with him. I was 21. So No Ai's experience of love between the city and village ultimately reflects various interrelationships of unequal power. In the city, she is doubly marked as a Hill Karen girl with disability. So even though she talks about love as her own choice, she eventually knew that she is being exploited. In the village, she is in a vulnerable position. Due to her disability and urban experience, she deviates from village norms. But perhaps because this is inevitable in her case, she is exempt from some of these norms. Perhaps this allows her space to talk about her love and desire more freely than other women. For her, after her itinerary and adventures with the young men, she knew that marriage with Lung Pi was a sensible decision. It wasn't as if she had a lot of choices, but she was able to narrate it as her own moral decision, where she finds her agency in deciding to make change in her own life. Today, she has a son and daughter and lives with her daughter's family. Now I'd like to tell another story about M Village, a Komuang village. In the early 1990s, women from village often went in groups for wage work in M Village, 40 kilometers away. They would go in a group and stay for a week or more, and women who came back from wage work in M Village were often teased by older villagers. Oh, your stomach is grown. I hope you didn't get pregnant at M Village, like that. In fact, M Village area had a long history of Komuang and Karen living in close proximity, as Karen used to live in the hills surrounding the M Village plains. There has been layers of cases of intermarriage and therefore a sense of familiarity between local Komuang and Karen. But the Karen there had moved out in the 70s as Hmong moved in to grow opium and later cabbage. From my field site, S Village 2 villagers had been visiting Komuang in M Village to trade forest products with rice and salt. In the 1980s, the Komuang in M Village began to produce garlic and soybeans in the plains, which they sold in the nearby market via the newly built road. So M Village thrived economically by these cash crops, and Karen from surrounding areas, including S Village, began to go there for wage work. It was around this time that the Komuang men, including those from M Village, began to visit neighboring Karen villages seeking brides. A few times during my long-term fieldwork, I saw a truckload of Komuang young men coming to visit, going into Karen houses seeking desirable young women to woo into marriage. Marrying Karen women was less expensive, and Karen brides were believed to be obedient and hardworking. In 1998, I received a call from S Village that No Pi, a daughter of my host family, was getting married. Nopi was 17, and after graduating in Mosan, she stayed in Chiang Mai living with her brother and his friends. Her parents worried that this was risking her reputation, and after bringing her back to the village, they were eager to get her married. The groom was the young 30-year-old Kamnan of M village. He had married and divorced twice with Khommuang women, after which he came to look for a Karen bride and found Lord P. In his own words, he was fed up with Khommuang women who were always after his money but didn't work enough. Meanwhile, Nopi's mother had always been telling me she really hoped all her daughters would get married with Karen men. So it came as a surprise that she eagerly approved of this marriage with the man from M village. She explained to me that M village was, after all, a Karen village. And another surprise, and the Kamnan had Karen relatives. The familiarity of M village with the history of interethnic relationship and the status and person of the Kamnan had persuaded her. In the morning of the wedding, at the Kamnan's relatives from M village arrived. They brought out a bright pink dress for the bride. Upon seeing this dress, Nopi's mother threw a fit, crying out, "I won't let my daughter get married in such disgraceful costume." Tension was rising, and there was some negotiation between elders of both villages. Finally, it was decided that the wedding will be done in Khommuang style first, and then in Karen style. Once married, Nopi moved to M village to live with the Kamnan, but the couple and their children visit often to see her parents and siblings. In M village, there is a large number of Karen women who have married in and can be support for each other, although Nopi has not been uncomfortable in her marriage. So much of my research among Karen from the late 1980s attests to the working of power differentials at the intersection of gender and ethnicity. There's an interethnic relationship on varied levels of intimacy, distance, and power differential, as I have shown. The varied configurations demand a fine-tuning of understanding intersectionality, both by the actors as well as by the ethnographer. Especially through marriage, the intersection can enhance and bring forth nuanced and unexpected connections rather than merely oppression and exploitation. What I talked about is based on fieldwork up to the early 2000s. Against the background of rapid socioeconomic changes in Thailand, the lives of villagers have also changed drastically. Most children receive education up to high school, and some go beyond to vocational training or college. After receiving education, young villagers stay on to work in the city. Marriage age is far delayed, and partners can be from way beyond village bounds, even though there seems to be a preference for among young Karen women and their parents to find current partners. Families, especially mother and daughter, live apart but communicate frequently using mobile phones and SMS. Even though young women now move about freely, their ties to their parents are quite secure. I hope I've been able to tell you how my research among Karen, and especially in this Karen women, has taught me alternative ways of thinking about family and minority women's experience, as well as connectivities across differences. This is a recent wedding, which also joined me in February, between a young woman from the village who graduated from Rajapat, Chiang Mai, and then went to study in China, and a young Karen policeman. Was he a policeman or a ta'am? Soldier from a neighboring village, although they met each other in Chiang Mai. It looks extremely flashy and unorthodox, yet many of the details of the Karen wedding ritual were continued, especially by the parents and relatives. While the bride and groom, they bring in modern Thai and Chinese youth culture. There is much change, but also continuity. even though I've gone back to S Village from time to time, the last time I actually did real research was almost 10 years ago. I'm hoping to redo a house-to-house survey to compare with notes from my earlier research and see how family membership, mobility, birth, ritual, and care have changed and what has remained unchanged. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ajahn Hayami, for the very informative talks, and I also mesmerized by the way that you put a Korean word into the storyline. That's really cool, I would say. Okay. So now it's an open discussion. So anyone that have any further questions about Ajahn Hayami, few word, and other aspect of her work, especially other stuff related to like aging and care, and how you want to know more a bit about like the recent works. This is the time. This is an opening discussion. So if anyone have any questions, เชิญค่ะ
Thank you, Ajahn Hayami. I get from the experience of Hayami, remind me when I follow Panchaman anyway, do research in the calendar too. And I'm very impressed in women or female current activity, actually distillation, spring, tom lao. And I got the word before, especially the women when they prepare the dough or bang lao. They say the word, คนดี I thought the word ดี that logo can saturate to be current word คนดีขอให้เมาคนเมาขอให้บ้าคนบ้าขอให้ตาย I was thinking about this spell immerse, and it surprised me when I saw very loud. The Lao people also the women of Lao also say the same word. คนดีขอให้เมาคนเมาขอให้บ้าคนบ้าขอให้ตาย And another thing, I think that Karen also shared the idea with the Lao people. That's in case of you do like a moral evaluation of before you get married and you do misconduct, you will be punished by you have to go to naked. A woman or the girl with they wear what we call wrap hair or a kind of net olive and the man go naked and pull out the buffalo. And in my village, when I imagine the current also say the same thing with the law. This is the report from friends and anthropologists. And I also until now I don't know why no current law. But from the Luang Prabang or the Laos Chronicle, they say that the origin or the original of the people who found Luang Prabang, they call Kanhang. Kanhang in Laos is Karang or Korean. But so many things really close and very I like that. Share the same the common idea. Correct. Even the federal, I think Thailand, Laos, and Karen also share the common thing if we can study in the detail. This is not the question.
But you thank you. This is actually from the preparation of Lao to the drinking, there's a whole culture. The preparation is done only by Mugunov, the maidens, and there's a strict procedure of preparing, and it's very sexy and very interesting. But I'm not going to go into it. But I think there is a Japanese anthropologist, Ishige Sensei, who did a survey of Asian lawmaking, and so he has written about this. But I think a detailed survey of how this is done across the region would be really, really interesting, because you find similarities, like you say, and I'm sure they crossed paths in the long past somewhere. So, yes, thank you so much. It's my favorite topic.
Any other?
สวัสดีค่ะอาจารย์คะ I would like to know why you interested in Korean. You do research for a very long time. So, why you fascinated in research topic?
Thank you. One reason is when I read Iijima Sensei's book, it was such a fine monograph. Usually, in those days, anthropological work was very boring, just a description of just topics. But Iijima Sensei's work was looking at how, as Karen minority, were integrated into the Thai nation. What was the process? And so it was a very dynamic monograph, and I felt very interested. But also, I like the Karen fabrics, and also I don't know if you ever saw Paul. There's a coffee table book about all the hill people, and the photographs and different characterizing of the hill people. And the chapter on Karen says, Karen are people of harmony, which is in Japanese wa, which is Japanese. And I think the description was for example, Lisu was maybe more sort of competitiveness, or I can't remember correctly, but I felt from my own nature, I feel more comfortable among the Karen. Yes.
May I ask? I thought I heard a word about your project. There was a word, something like proto area for transformation or something. There was some mention along the way of this morning. I think from Ajahn Manchiwan or from, I don't know. But I am interested in your interest regions beyond countries. So I was attracted. There would seem to be some mention about your doing research in Laos in that project. In some way, I'm interested in how you see your life after retirement. Beyond the because beyond the usual fixed area, but in a broader sense. How do you see it?
Thank you. I'm thinking both focus as well as beyond. In terms of focus, I want to go back to the village and really do research on, because things have changed so much, and I'd like to be able to talk about it from now, to look back. But also, since my topic, I always am doing topics about what what stage of life I am at. So now I'm looking at aging and care. And in looking at aging and care, as Ajahn Suvichai, in your talk, you mentioned, you were learning from the Thai perspective how Japan developed and both positive and negative things in Japan. For me, everybody is looking at Japan to talk about aging and care because Japan is an early aging society. But for me, I think maybe there are things that we can learn from the late aging societies. So I've been looking at Thailand, and I can't say I can do the whole region, but I'd like to do a comparative of how this is progressing in countries with different stages of development when aging happens. I think the matching of when the development is happening and at what speed and how aging is progressing has a lot to do with it. So I'd like to look at different cases.
Yes, just the follow-up. I really enjoyed your talk, and one of the many moving things I found about it was your encounter with the old lady on her deathbed, and her idea that, whether it's her idea or the other people in the group idea, that when she said she wanted to go, she was going far, she was going to Japan. It made me think that, with your interest in this combination of aging, gender, ethnicity, when we think about encounters beyond the village, or we always think of young people moving to a town. You talk a lot about the experiences of young women, for example, and what they would wear and wouldn't wear in town. I wonder, with your future research, or even with your observations from what you've done, whether there's also a kind of neglected area, thinking about how older people encounter the city. With increasing mobility, either people revisit themselves, or urban influences, or city people sort of arriving there. I wonder whether you got any reflections or ideas about these kinds of encounters, because much of what we think about in terms of the encounter between other ethnic minorities and the city, we think about it in terms of young people. Then, of course, younger people tend to move more. But with all mobility, communication, exposure to ideas, I wonder what sort of studies there are or observations you have about these kinds of encounters of older people and the city.
Unfortunately, I can't think of any studies that have been done about older people from the hills coming to the cities. I do remember I am doing some interviews in the state elderly home in Chiang Mai, and one of the workers is a Korean man, young Korean man, and his wife also works in the kitchen. So they work together, and they brought their children there, and they're happy to work there. But they would eventually want to go back to the village, and they brought their parents to the state home, and they were horrified. They said, we really don't want to be in the city, and especially not in this state home. And I think talking to the elderly in the village, I think the happiest way to end is in the village with their family, just like the old lady. But they also resign to the fact that their children will go out and work. So they try to keep contact and maintain this ties so that they won't be left alone. But I think aging is becoming far more severe now. Now I'm seeing more people on the verge of becoming bedridden, and caring for these elderly would be very. Still now, there's only 1 or 2 cases, but I think this is going to increase. And when that happens, I'm wondering who is going to take care of them. And it's going to be a very severe situation.
I want to listen from you that the impact of Christianity on the role of women in handling constitutional families in current village, because I'm observing that the many parents are converting to Christianity, right? So I want to hear from your perspective on the impact of Christianity. Right?
Thank you. Actually, this is a tough question because it's something that I wanted to do way back in my dissertation, and I gave up because I couldn't really pinpoint the effect that I could see. But definitely, if you look at the current the church organizations, women have a place in it, and they are very forward. Although I think that the head of the heads are always male. But in the village too, the Christian women are the ones who are educated first, who take up family planning first. They are always ahead of the other women, and they have places to speak up more than the non-Christian women. So in that respect, I think it has been a boost for Karen women towards education and higher status. But at the same time, I feel that there's, at least in the 1980s and 90s, there was some effect of the modern family kind of image among Christian Karen that was not there among the non-Christian. So it seemed Christian women, men in the Christian households did less than in the household than men in the non-Christian households. But I never did really a quantitative survey or analysis of this, so I couldn't really pinpoint or say anything about this. It was just a sense that I had. So that's just not academic observation.
Thank you, Yoko. My question is related with migration studies. So in migration studies, it seems that when women move out, mobility is empowerment, right? But here in your case, it seems that even though she moved out, but gender morality is still attached with her. She seemed to be constrained by the morality from the village. So I wonder if you can talk a little bit more when economic empowerment does play any role in this kind of intersectionality of gender, class, and sexuality. It seems to me that of all this structure, inequality, gender is the top of everything, even though the woman is empowered by economically, still morality is still attached with her.
As I said, this is quite a bit outdated, and so there was a sort of a threshold, a time when a lot of young women started to go out, and I think this happens everywhere, that young women start to go out into the city or work outside the village bounds, and this in this area, I think it started in maybe the 2000s, mid 2000s, that it was becoming less of a stigma for women to move around. And then once they're out and they study, they get higher degrees and gain a sort of white collar or good working place. It's they're the pride of the village or the family, and so talking in that respect, I think another fine tuning of okay, how does that affect their relationships in the city, or if they're going to have some relationships with non-Karen men, what is going to be at work there is I think it's a different situation from the very sort of closed condition that I talked about. But I'd like to know about the sham experience later, if we can talk about it.
อาจารย์ขอ
But I think that now the current, the control of women maybe less than before, yes. Because you cannot, the family or the community can control less because women came out to study and to work and to choose the man of their choices, right? Like that. So not sure if the kind of this morality that we talk about that can still control the women in this migration period. But I also observe that it's still very interesting that they try to control, even though the women or the girls are in the cities, even the Christian communities, they try to use this morality, to, especially the serious one that you should not have sexual relations before marriage. So even the girls coming to the cities, then the community now they know where they are, what they do, to follow up. So if they know about these relationships, then they try to send the signal or send the message that you should come back and at least organize kind of wedding. So they still try to control by using this sexual morality, and also interesting that even the Christian households, they also believe that if they don't do proper marriage, then there will be a problem. The problem is village, something like that. I don't really fully understand this, but there's something that we think that it should be gone, like the ritual to purify. The ritual that they have to do if you commit the adultery or not proper adaptation like that. But in many villages, they still do that ritual. Even nowadays, they can have to call back girls and boys in the city and to do the ritual in the village.
Yes, I completely agree. I think there's the sense of morality is still binding, and the parents try to bind. But I would like to know how the economic factor is going to affect that.
My experience, thank you, Yoko. My experience may not be related to the topic, but I just would like to share my experience as a professor in tourism studies that I met a guy, a Korean man who got married with the Japanese girl, like long time ago, because of tourism. And that man was a Korean man who was a tour guide. And then the man is quite poor to take the certificate to be a tourist guide. So the Japanese girl helped him a lot, even though the man didn't pass the exam. So the girl came to talk to me as the head of that project. Well, what my topic is just want to share that the men, maybe the Korean men, have more freedom than women in the village, that they got opportunity to see or to live with the foreign girls. And recently, when I worked on as the editor-in-chief of the journal, so one of my proofreader was the Australian girl, women. And she also got married with the current man and got a baby, and now they moved to live in Australia. So in my ideas, I think, I'm not quite sure because I'm not keen in the current studies, but I found that the current men have more freedom and don't have more boundary to the village compared to the girls. So that's what I would like to share. Thank you.
I agree. I mean, it used to be the double standard. The man could play around with anyone outside, but if he wanted to really settle down and have a good marriage, he comes back to the Korean village. But meanwhile, in youth, he would play around. That was the norm. But now I think both Korean women and men, there are a lot of marriage with foreigners and Japanese.
Any more questions from student fellows? We still have time for maybe 2 questions. So if not, may I ask Ajahn?
I don't know if you want to answer, but I want to ask about your experience being the director of the center, because I think that this is the first female director of the center, no? Which I think majority of the center are men, right? So anything that you can share, kind of Japanese women working in that environment?
When I first entered the center, I was the only woman, but by the time I was director, we had maybe 6 out of 32 full-time faculty who were women, and the male members of the center boasted that we had one of the highest in Kyoto University, the highest percentage. I don't think we should boast until we have 50%. But I think as you and Ajahn Suritaya, Ajahn Boise, Ajahn Dwunchai, Ajahn Ampon, and Ajahn Hirsch have all been to the center, and I think I could fairly say that it's quite comfortable for anyone, women or men or whatever nationality, to be at our center. And I think to be comfortable in a situation, it's not just lots of women, but lots of people with different backgrounds and different characteristics. It makes it more comfortable to be, and I did at least try my best to maintain or increase that diversity factor in the center, not just as a woman, but as one person among a diversity of people and interesting scholars that we have. So thank you all for coming, and I hope more of people here will come again.
some time for a last question. Anyone have a last question? If not, I will ask Hayami. It's a pleasure to have you here today, and you are as a women anthropologist and have been working in that field work in the Korean village. And I'm also interested in like the idea of like drinking with the people in the field, and being a woman anthropologist that we cannot not totally deny drinking. I would like to ask about your experience and also the suggestion for the fellow students, because like I'm too went there and regret a lot of what I've done there. Anyway, we would like to ask your experience and suggestions for the students. There's a fellow PhD student, master student who looking forward to do their field work. So this will be the aimed questions. Please,
Anyone who has had the occasion to drink with me will that I'm not a good drinker. I enjoy drinking a lot. I turn completely red and I lose, a lot of things in my mind. And I have up in the hill village, the Karen distilled rice liquor is very strong. And I have, on many occasions, I have just completely lost it. And, I would be lost and then open my eyes and I would see many faces looking over me and very worried. And then they would feed me with tamarind leaves soaked in water and with sugar. And this is really nice. So this is my advice to you.
Very useful suggestion. I have first. Okay, and then we covered by the what is that, like the leaves, the young leaves of tamarind. Okay, we're going to the end of the morning session. So before we conclude this morning, we would like to express our appreciation to Professor Hayami, and may I get Professor Surishai Wandam to give a token of our gratitude to Professor Hayami, and this is set as a memento of our time together and insight shared today this morning. And can you stand up here? So here is a here from Department of Sociology and Anthropology.ชื่อคุณลงนะคะเดี๋ยวจะขอมายืนอยู่ด้วยกันอาจารย์เชิญอาจารย์ผักเป็นเวลาแทนอาจารย์สุริยาเชิญด้วยค่ะอาจารย์เชิญผ่านมาเข้าตัวแสงไม่เอาแสงใช่ไหมเดี๋ยวไม่ขึ้นแสงโอเคดูแสงพอดีThank you so much for this morning session, and do apologize for we are honored and also want to apologize for the technical issue. And for now, we have not a break, it's a lunch box, and you can get the lunch box on the left wing over here at the register point, and apologize again for making angry soul. And we'll make sure that this afternoon sessions the techniques is gonna be okay. Okay, please have a break. I'll be back here at 1 p.m. นะคะ